Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the 2014 CMS Memorial Day Program. This year, the Veterans Assistance Committee has taken a slightly different approach to the program by providing an in-person historical perspective of military life as seen through the eyes of unsung heroes, the Buffalo Soldiers. Before the presentation, let me call your attention to the note cards, the pencils, and paper on your seats. This program will immediately be followed by a question and answer portion, so please be ready to write down any questions that you may have during the actual presentation. Before we begin, let us stand for the posting of the colors by our local Woodlawn High School color guard. No one got hurt, so we're okay. This Memorial Day, we recognize the sacrifice of all U.S. uniformed military service personnel who laid down their lives so that we may keep the freedoms for which they fought and died. Let us not forget that their blood stains battlefields across the nation and our world. At this time, I ask that you stand, if you can, for a moment of silence and unity to remember the service members who have died in defense of our nation. Today we are honored to have with us today members of the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiment Baltimore Chapter, better known as the Buffalo Soldiers. The regiments were activated in Greenville, Louisiana, and Fort Leavenworth, Kansas on September 21st, 1866. The regiments fought in many campaigns and skirmishes on the western frontier where they earned the name Buffalo Soldiers, and where many of these brave Americans sacrificed and died for their country, ensuring our nation remained free. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored at this time to present the 9th and 10th Cavalry Regiment's Baltimore Chapter Buffalo Soldiers.
Buffalo soldiers, present Holmes. Order, Holmes. Be seated.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Baltimore Chapter of the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Association, the Buffalo Soldiers, we would like to thank you for allowing us to be here today to present to you the history and the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank Larry Kimball, along with the Veterans Assistance Committee here at CMS, for allowing us to be here today. Now, before I get started, what I'd like to do is to introduce my colleagues to you who have joined me today in presenting that history to you. First, I would like to present Trooper Jean Falcon. Trooper Falcon is the vice president of our chapter. She's also assists me as far as the reenactment activities that we conduct. And she is also a CMS employee here with your organization. Next, I would like to present Trooper Ronald Falcon. Trooper Falcon is also a member of the reenactment committee. I would now like to present Trooper Arthur Ames. Trooper Ames is also a member of the reenactment committee as well. And finally, I would like to introduce Trooper Joan Cruz, who is also a member of the reenactment committee. And we thank you for allowing us to be here today. Just to give you a little bit of information about our chapter and what we do, again, I indicated that we're the Baltimore chapter of the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Association. There are 31 other chapters that are located throughout the United States, and all of us have the same mission and the same goal in mind, and that is to tell the history and the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, without further ado, what I'd like to do is to explain to you some things that you may or may not be aware of. One of the things that I would like to talk to you about and indicate is that African Americans have always been there to serve and defend this nation. In every single conflict, African Americans have been present, dating all the way back to the mid-1700s during the French and Indian War or the 7-Year War. One of the things I'd like to let you know is that 12 out of the 13 colonies, African Americans served in the colonial militias. During the American Revolution, over 5,000 African Americans served in the Continental Army under the command of General George Washington. During the War of 1812, African Americans again served in the Continental Army. As a matter of fact, they served in 2 key conflicts right here in this area. when the British Army had invaded Washington, D.C., and they were on a forced march to Baltimore, African Americans were among the members of the Continental Army that halted the British advance at the Battle of Bladensburg. African Americans were among the Continental Army who defended Fort McHenry. They were also present under the command of Colonel Andrew Jackson during the Battle of New Orleans. Moving forward, African Americans served during the U.S.-Mexican War. Moving forward, African Americans were also present when Texas wanted to gain its independence from Mexico. In March of 1836, African Americans were among the 189 defenders at a small Spanish mission located in San Antonio, Texas. And the name of that mission was known as the Alamo. African Americans were there serving when Colonel Famine was defeated at the Battle of Goliad. And they were also present when General Sam Houston at the Battle of Cerro finally defeated General Santa Anna, and Texas was able to gain its independence from Mexico. During the U.S. Civil War, which occurred in 1861 to 1865, in 1862, Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist, persuaded Abraham Lincoln to sign legislation allowing African Americans to serve in the Union Army and in the Union Navy. Over 200,000 African Americans received that call. And during that time, 37,000 lost their lives. 177 regiments were created. They fell under the banner of USCT, known as the U.S. Colored Troops. And one of the first regiments was known as the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. That regiment was portrayed in the movie Glory. And in July of 1863, 2 weeks after the Battle of Gettysburg, the men of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment engaged the Confederate forces at Fort Wagner, South Carolina. And during that battle, the first African American received the Medal of Honor. And his name was William Carney. He was severely wounded during that battle. He made it back to the Union lines. The 54th's commanding officer, Colonel Robert Shaw, was killed during that battle. William Carney was the U.S. flag bearer that carried the United States flag during that engagement. He made it back to the Union lines. He presented the flag to the acting commanding officer of the 54th, and he indicated that the United States flag never left his hands and it never touched the ground. When the Civil War was over, 37,000 African Americans had given their lives. And moving forward after that, in July of 1866, the westward expansion of the United States had already begun. People were moving westward for a better way of life. And the reason why they were moving west was because of the conflict that they had faced during the Civil War. But as they moved west, there was also another issue that they had to be concerned about, and that issue was lack of law enforcement. So what did Congress decide to do? What they decided to do is that they created 5 additional cavalry regiments, and included within those cavalry regiments was the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry. And those 2 cavalries consisted of all African American troopers. The thing that was interesting is the fact from the rank of private through the rank of sergeant major, they were African American. but from the rank of second lieutenant to colonel, they were white. The 9th U.S. Cavalry was created in Greensville, Louisiana, outside of New Orleans, while the 10th U.S. Cavalry was created in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Colonel Robert Hatch, the commander of the 9th, Colonel Benjamin Grierson, the commander of the 10th, admired these men and assumed the role of their commanding officers. And in 1866, they were formed and organized, and both regiments served west of the Mississippi. Now, the 9th and 10th were not the only African-American regiments that were created. There were 2 infantry regiments created as well. 4. They were the 38th, 39th, 40th, and 41st. And those 4 infantry regiments were then combined to create the 24th and 25th Infantry, who served in support of the 9th and 10th. In 1866, when they were first formed and organized, their mission was simple. Number 1, it was law enforcement, the protection of the wagon trains, the protection of the railroads. They were also responsible for ensuring that the telegraph lines remained in place. They were responsible for ensuring that the roads were kept and maintained. They also made sure that the United States mail also went through. But in 1867, their mission changed. 1867 marked the beginning of the war with the Native Americans. And in that particular incident, that war was caused for one reason and one reason only, and that was for greed. Hundreds of tribes, Native American tribes, had signed various treaties with the government, indicating that the only thing they wanted to do was live in peace. But one thing that they did not want is that they did not want anyone else to encroach on their land. The land that they most sacredly held were the Black Hills of the Dakotas. It was considered to be their most ancient burial grounds. And what had happened, gold was discovered in the Black Hills of the Dakotas. And basically what happened after that is that thousands of settlers entered the Black Hills of the Dakotas, desecrated the Native Americans' burial grounds. To add insult to injury, buffalo hunters started shooting down their main food supply, the buffalo, but for no reason other than skinning the buffalo, taking its hide, its horns, its tongues, and selling it for profit, leaving the rest of the buffalo carcass to rot in the sun. The Native Americans were not going to stand by and allow this to happen. They immediately went on the warpath to stop what was going on. The government said that they were not going to allow this to happen as well, and called all 10 cavalry regiments into action, to include the African American men who served in the 9th and 10th. The Cheyenne, as brave as they are, were the first to encounter the men of the 10th U.S. Cavalry. They had never, ever faced African American troops before. They were astounded at how well these men defended themselves, so much so that they honored them and reared them after their most sacred animal, the buffalo. They looked at their hair. They looked at their skin color. They looked at how well these men defended themselves, so much so that they honored them and called them the Buffalo Soldiers. After the Cheyenne, the Sioux, the Arapaho, the Pawnee, the Blackfoot, all of these tribes were amazed again at how well these men defended themselves. But here's the interesting part of this. Even though the Native Americans gave these men the name Buffalo Soldiers, in reality, their interaction with the Native Americans was very limited. Of the 2,000 skirmishes that the United States Army has recorded during that period of conflict, the Buffalo Soldiers were involved in less than 10%. Now, the interesting thing about it is that when Geronimo surrendered, he wanted the Buffalo Soldiers to safely escort him to the reservation, which they gladly did. Chief Nana, another great Apache war leader, also wanted the same thing, and the Buffalo Soldiers were there to safely escort them as well. Victorio. Victorio was considered one of the best guerrilla fighters the United States Army had ever faced up to that point. With less than 275 braves, he inflicted more casualties than the other Indian leaders put together. His concealment, the tactics that he used, hit and run, the U.S. Army revered him for it. So much so that they used the tactics that he did to incorporate some of the tactics that we still use today to defend this nation. When Victorio was surrounded by the Buffalo Soldiers at Rattlesnake Springs, New Mexico, he would not surrender, nor would the Buffalo Soldiers eradicate or destroy his tribe. They allowed Victorio, along with the rest of his tribe, to cross the Rio Grande into Mexico, never to return to the United States. During that Native American campaign period, 17 Buffalo Soldiers received the Congressional Medal of Honor. At that time, we moved forward. And the first Buffalo Soldier to receive the Medal of Honor was a gentleman by the name of Emmanuel Stantz. He was the first Buffalo Soldier to receive it. During the Spanish-American War, the 9th and 10th Cavalry were called into service one more time. And in Cuba, they served alongside Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders, the 9th on one side, the 10th on the other. If it had not been for the Buffalo Soldiers assisting Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Riders would not have secured San Juan and Kettle Hill. Roosevelt praised them for what they did during that conflict. 7 additional Buffalo Soldiers received the Medal of Honor. But when they returned to the United States, it was asked, how did those African American soldiers do? Were they there? Were they in support? In order to appease a political agenda, it was then said that they did not contribute very much. Well, if they didn't, then why did 7 of them receive the Medal of Honor? Moving forward, in 1900, the Buffalo Soldiers were part of a multinational force. Along with 7 other nations, they were involved in the Boxer Rebellion, which had occurred in Peking, China. And what had happened is that 11 nations were under siege. Their embassies, located in the center of Peking, were under siege by a Chinese faction known as the Boxers. The Buffalo Soldiers were amongst that force that helped save and relieve those besieged embassies. The Buffalo Soldiers later went on to participate in the Philippine insurrection. And they also participated in the Mexican Expeditionary Force in the response of pursuing and capturing Pancho Villa. General Jack Pershing, who was later known as Black Jack Pershing, admired the Buffalo Soldiers for what they did during the Spanish-American War. He wanted them to be a part of the force in pursuit of Pancho Villa, the Mexican revolutionary. The Buffalo Soldiers then went on to participate in World War I, and they also participated in World War II. Now, one of the things that I'd like to address with you is that even enduring all of these things that the Buffalo Soldiers had done, to say that they did not suffer is an understatement. One of the things that they went through, of course, they went through racism. Racism was there. And it was interesting because the wagon trains that they protected, and they never lost one wagon train. The wagon trains that they protected, even though these wagon trains safely went to their destinations, they were never given any credit or even a thank you. The other interesting thing is that when they were first formed and organized in 1866, from 1866 until 1875, the uniforms that they wore were remnants of the uniforms that they wore during the Civil War. Now imagine being assigned to Texas, Arizona, New Mexico with a 100% wool uniform. Imagine being in temperatures 110, 115, 120 in the shade and being asked to wear these uniforms. Now, imagine these uniforms that had holes in them that had been worn by someone else. Also, imagine boots that they were given, and these boots had holes in them as well. But you know what these men did? They said, okay, we'll take it. They mend them. They put them to good use. Imagine being given weapons that were old and obsolete, but yet these men were able to refurbish them and use them. Imagine being given horses. These horses were good for the glue factory, but imagine these men nursing these horses back to health and riding them. The Buffalo Soldiers did more walking than they did riding. The other thing that we need to talk about and that I need to address are the attributes of some of the things that these men did. One of the things I'd like to share with you, I would like to talk with you now about the first 4 African Americans who graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. The first one to graduate was Lieutenant Henry Flipper. He graduated from West Point in 1877. He served in the 10th U.S. Cavalry. The interesting thing about Lieutenant Flipper is that during the entire time that he served at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, no one said a word to him outside of whatever military activities they had to do. He slept alone. He ate alone. There was no one there to have any type of association with him. Of course, when he graduated, he went on to become a Buffalo Soldier. But what had happened is that he was then later fraudulently charged for embezzlement. And what had happened after that is that he was dishonorably discharged. President Clinton, an investigation was conducted. They were found that the charges were fraudulent. The charges were dropped, and his dishonorable discharge was changed to an honorable discharge. Lieutenant John Alexander graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point 10 years later in 1887. He served in the 9th U.S. Cavalry. He rose to the rank of captain, was doing extremely well until an illness had overtaken him, and he later died. In 1889, Lieutenant Charles Young graduated. And the interesting thing about Charles Young is the fact that he rose to the rank of colonel. Until his death in 1922, he was considered to be the highest ranking African American soldier to serve in the U.S. Army. The accolades that he had were tremendous. In 1903, while assigned to the Presidio at San Francisco. He then became the first park ranger assigned to oversee the Sequoia National Park along with General Grant's National Park. Now, he was due to be promoted to the rank of general, but due to political upheaval and political disappointments, he did not receive that commission, that promotion. And what had happened is that the committee indicated that they did not think that he was fit for duty. They thought because he had served for so long that he had suffered injuries, and those injuries would cause him not to receive his promotion. But what did he do? He was stationed in Ohio, and he rode from the state of Ohio to Washington, D.C. on horseback just to prove that he was fit for duty. But yet, they still did not give him that promotion to the rank of general. The last African American to graduate from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point during that time period was Lieutenant Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. is a remarkable soldier. And the thing that made him remarkable is the fact is that he was not in the infantry. He was not in the cavalry. But what he was a part of was the Army Air Corps. And during World War II, he became the commanding officer in charge of the 99th Pursuit Squadron, 332nd Fighter Group, better known as the Tuskegee Airmen. Now, the other thing that I would like to address and talk to you about, there were 3 Medal of Honor winners in the state of Maryland. And what I'd like to do is to talk to you about those Medal of Honor winners. Trooper Thomas Bourne, he received the Medal of Honor in 1879. He was born in Prince George's County. First Sergeant Augustus Wally, born in Reisterstown, Maryland, served in both the 9th and 10th U.S. Cavalry. He received the first Medal of Honor in 1890. He was due to receive a second one during the Spanish-American War, but was later denied, indicating that you could only have one Medal of Honor. Well, research was done, come to find out that there was more than one person to receive the Medal of Honor on more than one occasion. But again, because of political reasons, he did not receive that second Medal of Honor. And the third was Corporal William O. Wilson. He served in the 9th U.S. Cavalry, and he was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1891. Now, the interesting thing about Sergeant Augustus Wally, as well as Corporal William O. Wilson, is that we have members in our chapter who are actual descendants of these Medal of Honor winners, and we respect them for that. The last thing that I would like to address and talk to you about are the chaplains who also served. Henry Vinton Plummer was a chaplain assigned to the 9th U.S. Cavalry. And not only was he responsible for ensuring that religious services were held and conducted, but he was also had a passion to ensure that any man that entered that regiment, if they did not know how to read when they came in, they knew how to read when they came out. The thing about it is the fact that because of his passion and because of some of the things he did, higher authorities did not like what he was doing. So with the help of another Buffalo soldier, he was court-martialed and dishonorably discharged. And I can say that a few years ago, that court-martial was overturned along with his dishonorable discharge as well. Lieutenant Colonel Alan Allensworth, he was a chaplain in charge overseeing the 24th Infantry Division. He had the same passion as Henry Vinton Plummer, but he took it one step further. He ensured that the educational program that he put together, that the U.S. Army ensured that they followed through on it. And the same model that he put together is the same model that is currently used by the United States Army today in the development of their educational program. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for hearing my part of the presentation. And now what I'd like to do is turn it over to Trooper Gene Falcon, who's going to share some information with you about a female Buffalo Soldier. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It feels weird being up here. I've been working in this building for over 30 years, and I never had to stand up here. I know a few folks out here. I'm in the Division of Freedom of Information, so a lot of people have touched me one way or the other. Okay, we want to talk about this lady that's in history that we call a Buffalo Soldier, and I want to clear up a few things about her. And her name is Kathy Williams. She was born around 1844. She came into play during the Civil War, and during that time, the Union Army would come through different states, and they would take the slaves who were working on those plantations as contraband. They were used to do all the labor for the Union soldiers. Kathy Williams was taken as a cook and a laundress at that time. Now, we know that she was born of a free slave, but her mother was a slave, her father was free. But we don't know exactly their names. We know she was on the Johnson plantation in Missouri. She was actually born in Independence, Missouri. We know that much. Our historian was able to go to the United States Army archives to authenticate her, and we were able to do that. In 1861, Kathy Williams, she traveled with the 8th Indiana Volunteers during a lot of major campaigns during the Civil War. So she witnessed a lot. For those 4-year periods, that's all she knew was military life. Once that war ended, she didn't want to go back to Missouri. So she had to come up with a way that she can earn a living and to take care of herself, because she was an only child as far as we could tell. Didn't know where the parents were, whether they was alive or any of that. We did not know. So she wanted to be a soldier, where during that time, there were not even supposed to be any women during the war in the battlefield. But we know that there were many women who followed, especially on the Confederate side. They followed their sons and their husbands, brothers into war. So a lot of those ladies were being killed, they were being maimed, they were being seriously hurt. It caused a problem. So Kathy Williams did not want to be discovered as a woman. She knew she couldn't get into the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry, because how long could she stay in the saddle? That was rough riding whenever the time permitted for them to do that. So she came up with this idea that she was going to become a member of the 38th Infantry Regiment, who also served out west with the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry during that time. She disguised herself, and it was not hard because of her physical makeup. She was very tall for a woman during that time period. She's about 5'9", very dark-skinned, very masculine looking because of all the work she had done on the Johnson plantation and the fact that she traveled the entire Civil War with the Union Army doing all the manual labor. So she was very well fit at that time. So she covered her body, but first, let's say she enlisted first. But she camouflaged herself with the overcoat, a bulk jacket. She wore everything, and they never did an examination. They were looking for bodies during that time to serve, so they did not go further than looking to see if you were healthy, no disease, that type of thing. So she was actually able to pull this off. It wasn't like no one knew she was there. There were two individuals who did know, but they were relatives of hers, like a cousin and I think a male friend that she may have had. They knew that she was in disguise as a man. She had her name changed around to William Cathy. So it really wasn't hard. And like I said, they never looked at her. So they didn't know that they were actually looking at a female. So she decided she's in this 38th Infantry Regiment, which some of us know later on became a Buffalo Soldier Regiment. She traveled for 2 years. She was in the infirmary quite a few times, and I can see why. She traveled in the Civil War for so much, her body was probably broken down. She really wasn't capable of continuing on in the service very, very long. But she managed to do a 2-year stint without being discovered. I don't know what she did to separate herself from the men. We have not been able to figure that out, but we know based on the enlistment papers when she enlisted and when she was discharged that she held on for 2 years, not being discovered. And to me, I thought that was major because there's no other woman in military history who is documented as being in the service. There were many women that were there, don't get me wrong. They served as far back as the Revolutionary War. You had Carol Sampson, and you also had Molly Pitcher, who served. They were not disguised at all. They were from military families, so they were allowed to do this. So we know they were there. We knew there was over 1,500 other females who served, but they were not African Americans. That's what makes her unique, because her paperwork actually exists as being in the 38th Infantry Regiment and enlisting in 1866. Sometime during that 2-year period, at about the 4th or 5th time in the infirmary, because she developed all kinds of ailments from the walking, the carrying the equipment, all these other things that she had to do, her body began to break down. I don't know whether she decided to give herself up at that last examination or what, but can you imagine what happened when the surgeons discovered that there was a woman in the ranks? From what we find in the literature we read, her commander was livid, that he did not know that this woman had served under his command for 2 years. Looking at her paperwork, like I said, she was named Cathy Williams, but she became William Cathy. And they didn't dishonorably discharge her, they medically discharged her from the service. But they wrote her correct name on her paperwork. Instead of the William Cathy, they scratched that out and put Cathy Williams. Now she's discharged out of the service. Now what is she going to do? She said, well, I'm going to go out west and I'm going to, start me a business and try to take care of myself, which is what she did. She had several businesses out there. A lot of people knew her out in the Colorado area, in Mexico. She traveled a lot. But as years passed, she began to feel the remnants of marching miles and miles on foot like that. So finally, she needed to apply for her pension. She obtained the services of 2 lawyers out of the Washington, D.C. area to represent her before the pension board. It wasn't pretty because she was denied twice, saying that she was not eligible because she wasn't disabled. But yet still, you have a woman standing before you, and plus the fact that they can't believe that this is the person on the paper. This couldn't be William Cathy standing before me, but she had diabetes. Her toes were gone. She was walking with a crutch, but they said that she wasn't disabled. Her attorneys did not represent her well at all. Plus, they said there was not a precedent before her to give a woman a pension, which wasn't true. The records also show that Carol Sampson from the Revolutionary War and Molly Pitcher were represented by Paul Revere, and he obtained a pension for both these ladies after their service. Cathy Williams was also eligible for a land grant because she was in the Civil War serving along with the 8th Indiana Volunteers. She didn't get that either. After being denied so many times, she just disappeared in obscurity. Her story came out because a reporter in St. Louis heard about her. And before she disappeared completely, he interviewed her to get her story. Who was she? How did you do this? How were you able to serve with all of those men and no one knew? She never revealed her secret as far as I could tell from what I read. But I know she did that. And I'm telling you, that to me was an awesome thing for any woman. Even today, you know, I applaud the ladies who, they don't have to hide to serve in the military. But she did, because she wanted a better life for herself, even though it didn't end up that way at all. But I think it was an honorable thing for her to do what she did. We call her a Buffalo Soldier, because if she had stayed in the military 2 more months, she would have gone over into the 24th Infantry Regiment, because the 38th became the 24th. And we give her props in history, because a lot of people want to write her out because of what she did. And she wasn't the only one that did that, but she was the only one that we have the actual documents to prove it. So, and I represent all Kathy Williams out there today. And I just want to thank all the military ladies for doing what you did. Thank you. And she is real. There is a female Buffalo Soldier. That's what we call her. Kathy Williams, alias William Kathy. Okay, and I want to just end right here real quick and ask Trooper John Cruz, what we do is we have about 14 ladies who wear period dress. When we go out and do our presentations and discuss what we do and how the ladies dressed, or what we have ladies like her come and they make a lot of their own dresses and show what the African American ladies wore during that time period. We also had the opportunity, you can come on, to during President Obama's first inauguration, we hosted one of his balls, and we had our ladies in the gowns, and we were all in formal uniforms, and we were able to be the host of one of his balls. And give her 5 minutes or so to talk about our ladies.
Good morning. My name is Trooper Joan Scott Cruz, and I make all of the outfits that I wear. This outfit is an day wear, work wear. This apron was very important. And one of the things that you really have to just kind of close your eyes and wonder, the men, July 28th, 1866, were from east of the Mississippi. When they were shipped west of the Mississippi, they did not carry their mothers. They did not bring their wives, their aunts, their girlfriends, their daughters. So it wasn't until later, somewhere maybe around 1880 something, 90, when we began to have women that were wives come to the West with their husbands. The apron was one of the most important things that you could wear. This apron was used to keep your clothes clean. It was used to carry your fruit, your vegetables, your children. They were used to dust, to clean. They were used to hide your children behind. If you were out in the fields, if you were out in the desert and there was a snake or something and your child was frightened, you could put your child behind this apron and they would feel very secure being close to you up under this apron. This apron was used to take off, and if someone was wounded, you could wrap it around a leg, an arm. You could use it if you were sweating to wipe your sweat. You could use this to take off if you didn't have this kind of hat on to protect your hair, to protect your head from the sun. So this is just one of the outfits that was very important. This is what I call the work wear, day wear for the woman that was out there with her husband. You can go outside later and see something that would have been worn for a lady that was a little higher up, something that would be worn if you had a husband that was a first lieutenant. As Lieutenant O'Flipper, he didn't have a wife, but he did have a lady friend. So you can get some idea of the sleepwear, the workwear, the day wear, and the military, what you would wear to a military ball. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, we have our display in the hall. There's a lot of information we can't tell you. It's too much up here. But out on the table, there are handouts that you may want to take. We have posters of all the major players during the Buffalo Soldier period. If you want to take a look, we have books, things like that. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions for us?
If we have any questions at this time, if you could come to the middle, there's a microphone there for you. And if you're unable to get up, please just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you.
Hi, I have a question about the costume.
Yes.
It looked to me like the apron is sewn onto the dress, and I wondered if that's true and if that's part of the period nature of the costume.
My apron is sewn onto this dress, okay? I do have an apron that I wear over that. I did not bring it today, but the aprons were tied with very long ties in the back, bows, maybe 1.5 yards, very long ties, because they needed that to help wrap. If there was an injury, to wrap that child in, that would not just the edges of the apron, but those ties were used to secure.
Are there any more questions? All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, on behalf of the Baltimore Chapter of the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Association, we greatly appreciate allowing us to be here today to talk to you about the history and the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers. And before I end, I'd also like to thank all the members in the audience who served in the military, to include myself. We thank you for your time and your service, and it is definitely greatly appreciated. And we thank you.
I know we're running short on time here, so we will cut right to the chase and end this day. I do want to thank everyone for coming. I want to extend a special thanks to the Woodlawn High School Color Guard, particularly for not injuring anyone. Thank you. And I also want to extend a grateful thanks to the Buffalo Soldiers 9th and 10th Cavalry units. You know, I was not able to get to my questions. I had a list of questions. I was going to ask if you'd ever shown up at a party and someone else was wearing the same dress. But I'll save those questions for afterwards. I know you guys will be hanging out for just a few minutes. At this time, I want to, in conclusion of today's ceremony, I want to ask everyone to rise for the retiring of the colors. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll come.
This is yours too, right? Yes, it is. Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Really interesting. Really glad. You know, last night I was telling my 6-year-old